Things that are important for us in the fatigue risk management group are, and every committee here, is communications. The communications from the pilots to us and from us back to the pilots. And it's the accessibility of some of these communications that is also the problem. Most pilots are not concerned about fatigue until they're faced with fatigue. A large percentage of pilots do not understand where to go if they need to call in fatigue. Are there any tools out there to help me to call in fatigue? Are there any tools out there to help me after I've called in fatigue to talk about what happened to my pairing and my sick bank deduction? All of these have been created, and all of these are in several sources for the pilot. One of the best places we were able to put to calling fatigue is into the content locker on everyone's iPad. In the content locker, there's a fatigue risk management page there, and you can select it, and up pops several of these items that will help you call in fatigue or recognize fatigue. And what we're looking for is, pilots to understand the process of recognizing the fatigue, avoiding the fatigue, and then calling in fatigue. And one of the articles we have in there is called the CARMA article, and that helps you from the time you call in fatigue till afterwards, step by step on how to do it. It's a really good article. It's a very simple format, and it explains what the CARMA stands for. Call in fatigue, arranging transportation, rest, making arrangements to get back to base, and then finally, after action report. And those are all very important for the pilot. But when you are calling in fatigue, your faculties, your ability to function sometimes is limited. And so we try to make this as easy as possible, but if you don't look at it now, the chances are you're not going to be able to find it when you're trying to call in fatigue and you're talking to the duty officer at that point. The opposite of communication is us getting back to the pilots. I would say that we get a lot of fatigue reports, we get a lot of fatigue events, and we don't always get back to the pilot on that. And that's one of the things we're working on there, to get automated responses, but then also getting back to the pilots with information that we've gathered. One of those avenues is the PDR system that ALPA has created. And we ask you, if you have a fatigue issue or you have a fatigue event, that you fill out 2 reports. One is with a company. That is data that the company has in their hand, and we can use with the company to later on create data to do, as I mentioned before, working the FERC process. If I have that data, I have it there. I have something to show the company that this is a fatiguing event, process, pairing, whatever's out there. We need it on the company side. We also need it on the union side. The reason for that is it gets more eyes on your issue. And with more eyes on your issue, that helps us become more accountable for the information you're sending. And it also allows the company, if they're seeing more issues and the company hasn't seen the more issues, then they can come to me or come to the company and say, we need to fix this problem. The second thing about the PDR that's great is there is an option for the pilot to say, I am willing to allow you to use my information freely. And that's great because I want to get back to the pilot and talk about events that have happened, the goods and bads that are out there in the fatigue world. And we all remember that in the military, we would go to the bar, go to the Oak Club, and just talk about our event or things that happen. We would talk about the goods and bads. And this would be a good place if the pilot tells me, hey, these were the goods and these were the bads. I can get back to the pilot, and they were able to put themselves in that position and role play if they were in that situation, what they may have done different. Because the issue I have is I get a fatigue report, and the very bottom of it says, I should have called in fatigue. We look at that as an event. We look at that as a fatigue event. That is where the pilot should have called in fatigue. If you at the end of your report say, I should have called in fatigue, that means you were fatigued. And the company is stepping forward to communicate back to the pilot group. They are creating quarterly newsletters in the content locker that discuss what we talked about in the quarterly meetings that we have. And the quarterly meetings that we have are with GOC, CRS, maintenance every once in a while, scheduling, ops, a plethora of people that we are involved in the whole process with the pilot operations. And a lot of information comes out with that. And we talk about sleep rooms, we talk about the alert system, we talk about scheduling issues. And we're now putting those out in the quarterly through the company. Also, the company is offering to set up a hub turn booth coming soon, where some folks from the company will be able to answer your questions regarding fatigue. And this is a great step in the process of communicating and allowing the crew force to see what goes on behind the curtain in that case. And the key there is the non-punitive aspect of filing a fatigue report and calling in fatigue. There is none. And I need all pilots to understand that if you don't give us the data, you don't give us the information, we can't fix the problem. So please file the fatigue reports. Some numbers in the last, since January of 2019, we've had 60 fatigue events. Out of those 60 fatigue events, 4 of the sick bank were not reimbursed. And those were conditions of where the pilots either had ample opportunity to sleep, or they actually should have called in sick for either one pilot had a reaction, a skin reaction in one of the hotels, and the other had a head cold. Those were legitimate sick calls. 4 not reimbursed for sick. They were still paid sick for when they called in fatigue. 15 sick bank reimbursed, and then the rest were NA, meaning that their pairing was revised. Now, all this information on what happens to your pairing and what happens to your sick bank is available on the Fatigue ALPA website, and it will also be available on the Fatigue Risk Management website that's on the PFC. The other issue we have is filing a fatigue report. I just asked for you to file a fatigue report, but that can be challenging sometimes, and that's frustrating on our part. It should be non-fatiguing for you to file a fatigue report. We made that an easier system, but there's been, I know, it's been some challenges where we try to gather as much information, because the more data, the more we understand where that pairing may have been fatiguing. But in that process of trying to make it more fancy and more robust, we've run up some issues in the iPad and even on your desktops or laptops. We're fixing that. Just as a matter of fact, yesterday, or 2 days ago, I was on the phone the other day, and it wasn't until a pilot told me what the issue was. And what it was a timing out issue on the fatigue event page, or sorry, the fatigue reporting page. So this poor pilot typing for more than 30 minutes loses their whole report, and then does it again and does it again. So after a while, pilot's very frustrated and wants to throw their laptop through the window. Actually, I think it was an iMac, so I think didn't want to throw that out the window, but frustrated. Did we know about this? No, not until one pilot tells me exactly what the situation was, and immediately I was in the offices the next day talking to our fatigue risk management group and some IT folks, and we'll have that fixed. Last issue is revisions. Marty just described in his video about all they work to do, or all the work they do to vet all the pairings and put lines together. 50 people involved, several weeks of work. We're involved, a lot of people involved to put these schedules together. Schedules come out, pilot gets revised. What vetting process is there when the pilot gets revised? 0. Most likely legal, but it is up to the pilot to vet that pairing that has now been revised. And when is it being revised? 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Are you at your best? No. Do you have 2 weeks of 50 people doing the math to look at your pairing? No. That is something I want to change. I want the ability for the pilot, the duty officer, CRS, to vet these pairings. We have biomathematical software out there that can be used by the company to do this. I also want to be able to look at it subjectively and look at the pilots instead of just grabbing a pilot and saying that person is legal to do it, but are they the best option? And we've got some ideas, and we're working with the company to try to head down that path to create a better vetting process for revisions out there, because those are on the rise and the vetting process is at 0, and we want to make that change.